Throughout history, the process of establishing liberty has required a constant, defining struggle against the absolute power of sovereign rulers. This timeline identifies the specific milestones of codified liberty. The process began with the Magna Carta in 1215, continued through the American Bill of Rights in 1789, and led to the 1928 Nehru Committee Report in India. The Magna Carta remains the earliest physical evidence of a sovereign formally agreeing to place limits on their own power. Part 3 of the Indian Constitution spans Articles 12 through 35, establishing a detailed framework for the modern state's relationship with its citizens. These rights serve as a codified restriction on absolute state power, established through centuries of political confrontation. Indian constitutional rights operate under specific qualifications, requiring the state to balance individual liberty against the maintenance of public order. The drafting committee created an interlocking structural hierarchy to manage these competing interests. This structure centers on the Golden Triangle, Articles 14, 19, and 21, which form the three core pillars of Indian constitutional jurisprudence. Understanding the Indian model of liberty requires viewing these three articles as an interconnected engine of defense. Before a citizen can enforce a constitutional right, they must identify the specific entity responsible for upholding it. Article 12 defines the state to include the Government and Parliament of India, the state legislatures, and all local authorities acting within the territory. Article 13 acts as a constitutional shield, filtering state actions to ensure they remain consistent with fundamental rights. Courts apply the doctrine of severability to remove unconstitutional portions of a law, while the doctrine of eclipse hides older laws that conflict with these rights. Article 13 provides the explicit basis for judicial review, making these rights legally enforceable mandates. The first pillar of the triangle is Article 14, which incorporates A.V. Dicey's rule of law. The British concept of equality before law operates as a negative restriction, ensuring no person is above the law. Conversely, the American concept of equal protection of laws establishes a positive obligation, guaranteeing equal treatment under similar circumstances. This positive obligation allows the state to pursue affirmative action and reservation systems, which are further detailed in later articles. This framework creates a context-aware system of equality designed to protect vulnerable sections of society. The second pillar of the triangle is Article 19, which contains the most visible public freedoms. Article 19(1) guarantees rights to speech, assembly, association, movement, residence, and profession. The state balances these freedoms through reasonable restrictions, which can be applied on grounds such as sovereignty, public order, and morality. Article 19 specifically protects movement within India, while rights related to external travel are addressed in Article 21. The interline permit system illustrates a valid restriction under Article 19, limiting inward travel to protected areas to safeguard the interests of scheduled tribes. Article 19 creates a highly specific, negotiated space of freedom governed by the security needs of the state. The final nexus of the triangle is Article 21, protecting life and personal liberty. Article 21 initially relied on procedure established by law, meaning the state could deprive a person of liberty simply by following its own legislative rules. The 1951 A.K. Gopalan case affirmed that this basic procedural compliance was sufficient. This interpretation stood for nearly 3 decades, until the 1978 Maneka Gandhi case. The ruling explicitly adopted the American concept of due process, requiring that laws must be inherently fair, just, and reasonable. The judiciary established fundamental justice as the ultimate test of state action, extending the interpretation of the law beyond simple procedural compliance. Constitutional rights remain theoretical until they are paired with a mechanism that can challenge the monopoly of state force. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar emphasized this by stating that Article 32 is the heart and soul of the Indian Constitution. Article 32 guarantees the right to move the Supreme Court to protect these liberties, making the enforcement mechanism itself a fundamental right. The Supreme Court's jurisdiction under Article 32 is dedicated to enforcing fundamental rights. By contrast, high courts under Article 226 possess a broader mandate to address ordinary legal rights for any other purpose. Article 32 serves as a fail-safe that converts these theoretical freedoms into actionable legal tools. Article 32 provides the citizen with 5 specific tools of enforcement, known as prerogative writs. Habeas corpus serves as a defense against unlawful detention. Mandamus forces a public official to perform their duties. Prohibition and certiorari allow higher courts to regulate lower courts, while quo warranto challenges the illegal holding of a public office. The Supreme Court acts as the physical arena where the tension between state power and citizen rights is adjudicated. The fundamental rights of the Indian Constitution function as a dynamic, judicially enforced mechanism that requires constant calibration.